Hello everyone and welcome to the Unanswered Questions True Crime Podcast.
I have spent hours and hours investigating this.
He basically told her that people have been killed. Journalists, independent investigators, people like that disappeared. It frightened her to the bone.
There's more to the story than meets the eye.
There were rumors of torture and homicide and sexual abuse, all sorts of egregious, horrendous crimes.
He was polygraphed 3 times. Each of those 3 showed evasions.
His resumes were a skeleton of truth.
He was mad at the world, and particularly mad at the government.
The study that he commissioned described a fictional terrorist attack.
If people have died over this, it means you're getting close to the truth.
You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to say, what the fuck?
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of my new podcast, Unanswered Questions, where every week we'll endeavour to discuss a mysterious unsolved case that has many lingering unanswered questions. So I hope you enjoy, and as always, leave me some feedback on what you think about the show and rate it as well. Now on to the show. This week we'll be talking about the Devil's Footprints. Now, the Devil's Footprints was a phenomenon that occurred during February of 1855 around the Exe Estuary in East and South Devon, England. After a heavy snowfall, trails of hoof-like marks appeared overnight in the snow, covering a total distance of some 40 to 100 miles or 60 to 160 kilometres. The footprints were so called because some persons suggested that they were the tracks of Satan and had made comparisons to a cloven hoof. Many theories have also been made to explain the incident, and some aspects of its veracity have also been questioned. Now we get into the incident. On the night of the 8th to the 9th of February 1855, and 1 or 2 later nights after a heavy snowfall, a series of hoof-like marks appeared in the snow. These footprints, most of which measured about 4 inches, 10 centimetres long, 3 inches, 7.6 centimetres across, between 8 and 16 inches, 20 and 41 centimetres apart, and mostly in a single file, were reported from more than 30 locations across Devon and in a couple in Dorset. It was estimated that the total distance of the tracks amounted to between 40 and 100 miles, 60 and 160 kilometres. Houses, rivers, haystacks and other obstacles were travelled straight over. Footprints appeared on the tops of snow-covered roofs and high walls which lay in the footprints' path, as well as leading up to and exiting drain pipes as small as 4 inches, 10 centimetres in diameter. The 26th of May 1855 issue of Bell's Life in Sydney published in its miscellaneous extracts column a weekly dispatch dated 18th of February, and I quote, "It appears on Thursday last night there was a very heavy snowfall in the neighbourhood of Exeter and the south of Devon. On the following morning the inhabitants of the above towns were surprised at discovering the footmarks of some strange and mysterious animal endowed with the power of ubiquity, as the footprints were to be seen in all kinds of unaccountable places, on the tops of houses and narrow walls, in gardens and courtyards enclosed by high walls and palings, as well as in open fields. The superstitious go as far as to believe they are the marks of Satan himself, and that great excitement has been produced among all classes may be judged from the fact that the subject has been descanted on from the pulpit. The impressions of the foot closely resembled that of a donkey's shoe and measured from 1.5 inches in some instances, 2.5 inches across. Here and there it appeared as if cloven, but in the generality of the steps in the shoe was continuous, and from the snow in the centre remaining entire, merely showing the outer crest of the foot, it must have been concave." End quote. The area in which the prints appeared extended from Exmouth up to Topsham and across to Exe Estuary to Dulwich and Teganmouth. Sorry if I get any of these names wrong. R.H. Busk, in an article published in Notes and Queries during 1890, stated that footprints also appeared further afield, as far south as Totnes and Torquay, and that there were other reports of the prints as far away as Weymouth, Dorset, and even Lincolnshire. Again, sorry if I get any of these names wrong. Now we come to the evidence in this case. There is little direct evidence of the phenomenon. The only known documents were found after the publication during 1950 of an article in the Transactions of the Devonshire Association asking for further information about the event. This resulted in the discovery of a collection of papers belonging to Reverend H.T. Ellercombe, the vicar of Cist St. George, during the 1850s. These papers included letters addressed to the vicar from his friends, among them the Reverend G.M. Musgrove, the vicar of Witchicombe, Raleigh, the draft of a letter to the Illustrated London News marked not for publication, and several apparent tracings of the footprints. Mike Dash collated the available primary and secondary source material into a paper entitled The Devil's Hoof Marks, Source Material on the Great Devon Mystery of 1855, which was published in 14 studies during 1994. Now we come into hypotheses about the case. Many explanations have been made for the incident. Some investigators are skeptical that the tracks really extended for more than 100 miles, arguing that no one would have been able to follow their entire course in a single day. Another reason for skepticism, as Joel Nichol indicates, is that the eyewitness descriptions of the footprints varied from person to person. In his 14 Studies article, Mike Dash concluded there was no one source for the hoof marks. Some of the tracks were probably hoaxes, some were made by common quadrupeds, such as donkeys and ponies, and some by wood mice. He admitted, though, that these cannot explain all the reported marks, and the mystery remains. First off, we have balloon. Author Jeffrey Halstead suggested that an experimental balloon released by mistake from Devonport Dockyard had left the mysterious tracks by trailing 2 shackles on the end of its mooring ropes. His source was a local man, Major Carter, whose grandfather had worked at Devonport at the time. Carter claimed that the incident had been hushed up because the balloon also wrecked a number of conservatories, greenhouses, and windows before finally descending to earth in Hoynton. While this could explain the shape of the prints, skeptics have questioned whether the balloon could have travelled such a random zigzag course without its trailing ropes and shackles becoming caught in a tree or similar obstruction. The next hypothesis is hopping mice. Mike Dash suggested that at least some of the prints, including some of those found on rooftops, could have been made by hopping rodents such as wood mice. The print left behind after a mouse leaps resembles that of a cloven-hoofed animal due to the motions of its limbs when it jumps. Dash stated that the theory that the Devon prints were made by rodents was originally proposed as long ago as March of 1855 in the Illustrated London News. In the paper's 10th of March 1855 issue, Thomas Fox, a brewer and brickmaker of Bellington, submitted illustrations of rodent tracks in varying snow depths, as well as a diagram for how rodents' hind and forelimbs create the hoof-shaped prints. Then we come to the kangaroo theory. In a letter to the Illustrated London News during 1855, Reverend G.M. Musgrave wrote, quote, "In the course of a few days, a report was circulated that a couple of kangaroos escaped from a private menagerie, Mr. Fisher's I believe, at Sidmouth." End quote. It seems, though, that nobody ascertained whether the kangaroos had escaped, nor how they could have crossed the Essex Estuary, and Musgrave himself said that he invented the story to distract his parishioners' concerns about a visit from the devil. Quote, "I found a very apt opportunity to mention the name of a kangaroo, in allusion to the report then current. I certainly did not pin my faith to that version of the mystery, but the state of the public mind of the villagers, dreading to go out after sunset, under the conviction that this was the devil's work, rendered it very desirable that a turn should be given to such a degraded and vitid notion, and I was thankful that a kangaroo served to disperse ideas so derogatory." End quote. Now, that was from Reverend G.M. Musgrave, letter to the Illustrated London News on March 3rd of 1855. Now we come to the badgers theory. In a letter to the editor of the Illustrated London News published on the 3rd of March 1855, Richard Owen stated the theory that the footprints were from a badger, arguing the animal was the only plantigrade quadruped we have in this island, and it leaves a footprint larger than what would be supposed from its size. The number of footprints, he suggested, was indicative of the activity of several animals, because it is improbable that one badger only should have been awake and hungry, and added that the animal was a stealthy prowler and most active and enduring in search of food. Now we come to similar incidents. Reports of similar anomalous obstacle upheaved footprints existed from other parts of the world, although none is of such a scale. This example was reported 15 years earlier in the Times. Quote, "Among the high mountains of that elevated district where Glen Orchy, Glenyon and Glen Orchy are contiguous, there have been met with several times during this and also the former winter upon the snow the tracks of an animal seemingly unknown and at present in Scotland. The print of the foot in every aspect is an exact resemblance of that of fowl of considerable size, with this small difference, perhaps, that the sole seems a little longer or not so round. But, as no one has had the good fortune as yet to have obtained a glimpse of this creature, nothing more can be said of its shape or dimensions. Only it has been remarked from the depth to which the feet sunk in the snow that it must be a beast of considerable size. It has also been observed that its walk is not that of the generality of quadrupeds, but that it is more like the bounding or limping of a hare when not scared or pursued. It is not in one locality only that its tracks have been met with, but a thorough range of at least 12 miles. End quote. Now that was from the Times, 14th of March 1840, page 1. In the Illustrated London News on the 17th of March 1855, a correspondent from Heidelberg wrote, quote, "Upon the authority of a Polish doctor in medicine, that on the," and I'm going to butcher this name, Piaskowa Gora sandhill, a small elevation on the border of Galicia, that in Congress Poland, such marks are to be seen in the snow every year, and sometimes in the sand of this hill, and are attributed by the inhabitants to supernatural influences." End quote. During 2013, trails were reported in Girvan, Scotland, possibly as part of an April Fool's hoax. To this day, the origin of these footprints remains unknown. With that, this case remains open, but with many unanswered questions that still remain unanswered. Please rate the show and let me know what you guys think about this and the many other cases I've covered. You can follow me on all major social media platforms, YouTube, BitChute, Dailymotion. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, links are all down below in the description. If you have a case you'd like me to have a look at or cover, don't hesitate to send me a message. I'm your host, and this has been the Unanswered Questions Podcast. Until next time, next on Unanswered Questions. Harry T. Moore and his wife Harriet V.S. Moore were pioneer activists and leaders of the early civil rights movement in the United States and became the first martyrs of the movement. On the night of Christmas, December 25th of 1951, a bomb that had been placed under the bedroom floors of the Moores' home in Mims, Florida exploded.